What is up, everyone? Welcome back to Lex Alexas. Today it is the final championship review of this championship season 2021-2022. It has been not my favourite season, but it has been a fantastic season regardless. The final day didn't really disappoint. There was some drama that we are going to talk about on the final day, and we've got our playoffs confirmed. We will be previewing those playoffs later on in the week as well. I'll be live streaming my watch-alongs for those games as well. The first game, Huddersfield and Luton, taking place on Friday, and the game between Sheffield United and Nottingham Forest taking place on the Saturday. So it's getting very, very close now to right at the end of the season. It's officially over for most of the teams, but for the 4 teams in the top 6, it's going to be a very interesting finish in the season. Before I actually start talking about this review, I want to say thank you to all of you guys for being so supportive in this year. It was definitely been my best year for Lex Alexas, and we're hoping that it's going to stay the same, because as you know, there are going to be some very notable changes to my availability and schedule according to the next season, 2022-2023. It could even jeopardize the future of this channel, and I've got to be honest about that. But I am remaining optimistic that I can figure out a way to do my commitments and with YouTube as well, because the community we've built has been absolutely terrific. And the final thing I'll announce before we go going, here are the final standings of the Lex Alexas Football Prediction League. We'll start off with the League 2 standings, and I've got to say, huge shout out to Coniston, who entered his score predictions right in the final game week, and he's ended up finishing in 9th place in League 2, so fair play. That was a pretty good achievement on your part there. Here are the final standings for the League 1 league. James Free scoring 11 points, and because of this, he just about snatches 3rd place of Blue Terrier by 5 points. It was a pretty close contest between those two predictors, so it was also very interesting with the set of results there. But the main prediction league looks like this. So it has pretty much been a 3-horse race for most of the season, and then it developed to a 2-horse race between myself and James Macy, and I have ended up on top in the end with 346 points, with 5 correct results and 1 correct score from my last game week, which was Stoke and Coventry. So picking up 8 points was just about enough, winning it by 5 points in the end. I gotta say, I'm not going to take any credit for this. Obviously, I've predicted every single week. Some of you have not even predicted every single week. But the biggest people I've got to say a huge thank you is to everyone who's taken part in these prediction leagues this year. You have really made a big excitement about this season. Yes, it takes forever to make these leagues, and what I'm going to do later on this week is that on the community tab, I'm going to send you an Excel sheet where you can actually look how the table has gone and progressed every single week. So that will be something very, very cool for all of you to see if you're interested, how the table looks from week 1 to now, because it looks night and day in terms of quality and the amount of people involved. But finally, I've been rambling on with this intro. If you guys like what we see, please give the video a like. It tremendously helps the channel. Let's aim for 20 likes in this video. That would be terrifically appreciated. Please subscribe to the channel if you've not done so. That also really helps. And please share this channel to as many people as you can. All of that helps. But without any further ado, let's start talking about how this championship 21-22 season has ended. We'll start talking about the game at St Andrews, and definitely 2 teams that would feel at the end of the season would have felt a little bit of disappointment. It was Blackburn that picked up the win, which I did predict a 2-1 victory to Blackburn, and I've got to say, both of Blackburn's goals were absolutely stunning. John Buckley outside the box, rifling a strike in the top right corner, and Ben Brereton Diaz also from outside the box having a really, really cool finish as well, making it 2-0. Pedersen made it 2-1, but ultimately it's been a really bad season for Birmingham. I've got to say, I can't really sugarcoat it. If we take away the points deductions that Derby and Reading have had, Birmingham would have just survived, but on goal difference. It would have made things very dramatic on the final day, I would have told you that. But it's definitely a not good sign. There were protests at the end of the game. You would have seen from the intro, they're saying BHSL out, and right now, if things don't really make a big change coming up, you know, the fans are going to get patient. I don't really blame them. It's been very complacent for Birmingham, and they've just been slowly but surely chipping down and losing that quality and degrading down. It's going to remind me a little bit of Sheffield Wednesday in a weird way as well, so they've got to be very careful. And Birmingham, whether they're going to keep Lee Bowie, I'm still not too certain on that. They really got to have a right approach going to next year. With Blackburn, they would feel a bit disappointed because their momentum kind of shift at the start of the season. An 8th place finish would be seen as a reasonably good season. But of course, in the position that they got themselves in the start, well, in the end of 2021, when they were only within a couple of points of the automatics, but to have in the bottom 5 in the league in terms of form in 2022 is a real big disappointment, and it seems to be a continuous theme with Tony Mowbray's seasons. And I think the Venkies have grown a little bit patient there. They've not renewed his contract, but I gotta say, they've got to get this next manager right. This squad has got so much potential, especially going forward. They can even have, if they keep Kaminsky and they keep some of their defenders, they've got all the foundations there for a fantastic championship team. I think they just really need to get this next managerial decision right. And then we saw Bournemouth in party mode, and they win again by 1-0. And that has ended their season on 88 points, only 2 points behind Fulham in the end of the season, bizarrely. But it was Kiefer Moore again and Philip Billing with the assist. The two of them combined have ultimately pushed Bournemouth through to the Premier League in these last 2 pressurising games that they had. And it was great build-up, actually. Brilliant play on the counter-attack. Kiefer Moore giving Bilkowski the eyes. He could have squared it to Sivki Dembele, but it was a bit selfish in a way. And he did take his confidence. And I believe that's 4 goals in 3 games for Kiefer Moore. I mean, he's stepped up. He's really stepped up. Of course, he had that injury from Cardiff when he joined Bournemouth. Maybe had he have, played a bit quicker, when he immediately signed for Bournemouth, would they have got Bournemouth in a better position? Because he has really stepped up. Their transfers in the January window, I think they've definitely been a big factor of Bournemouth getting over the line in the end. I think had they not have got those many players in, or those quality players in January, I dare say, then I don't think they would have actually gone through. I think they would have run out of steam, and then question marks would have been put on Scott Parker. I still think there's a couple of question marks with this team when they go up to the Premier League. I think it'll be very interesting from Parker to see if he's going to be cutthroat, get rid of some of the squad that he doesn't deem good enough and replace, or he's going to stick with it. And I personally would go for the first option and have a little bit more change, but obviously not too much change, because you've got to keep your core identity in that squad. Millwall, I mean, they finished 9th. It's their second highest league finish in the Championship since getting promoted from 2017. They would feel a little bit disappointed that they slightly fell short. It does look like Jed Wallace is going to be leaving Mill as well. He did look quite emotional when he was clapping the fans. I mean, if he's leaving on a free transfer, Championship clubs, get your negotiations in and ready for his wages, because he is going to be a fantastic player, whoever's going to be able to snatch him up. And then Derby end the season with a defeat, with a 1-0 home defeat to Cardiff. And if you looked at the chances, it was definitely Derby who were dictating the play, having 14 more shots than Cardiff and having 3 more shots on target than Cardiff as well. Cardiff in the end looks like they score with their only shot on target in the entire game. Jordan Hugill with the goal as well. And I've got to say, Jordan Hugill has contributed to 4 goals since he's come in January on loan, and I think he's actually done a really, really good job, Jordan Hugill, all things considered there. Derby going into League One next year, I'm not too sure how I think about that. I definitely think that if they keep a lot of their youngsters, that Wayne Rooney has definitely given them a healthy amount of game time this season, I think they can have potential. It's just really going to be down to the ownership. There's still complications with Kirchen's takeover deal, that the stadium is pretty much the last hurdle they got to get across. They've already dealt with all the claims, and the fact that it was so multi-layered for what was going wrong with Derby, which ultimately got them in the amount of points deductions that they managed to get in this season. It was such a poorly mismanaged club at the top by Mel Morris especially, and Kirchner is just slowly but surely picking away the problems. It could take a longer process, and the EFL could still grow a bit impatient with that. It could even mean that Derby could get more deductions next year if they don't sort things out via the deadline. But now they've got an owner that definitely if they do have financial backing off, But Kirsch is definitely going to be very persistent in this situation at the moment, which he does seem to. And I think the atmosphere was fantastic at Pride Park. There's definitely a good connection between the fans and the players and the manager, especially with Wayne Rooney. I think he's done a fantastic job this season, all things considered. I think Derby to not finish rock bottom with all the points deductions they were given, it could be seen as a minor miracle. I think staying out was always going to be a bit of an impossible task for Derby, even though at one stage of the season it did look a little bit possible. As for Cardiff, I think once again, a bit similar to Birmingham, they're going to have to hit the reset switch a little bit this season, and definitely some players will be moved on. I'm very interested if Steve Morrison, what decision he's going to make in terms of transfers going in, because of course he has signed a deal quite recently, Steve Morrison, so he will be going as Cardiff's manager next season unless things change in terms of decision from the board. But I don't know, it does feel like a very bizarre season for them, definitely very disappointing based on expectations set from this club. And then we see Huddersfield beating Bristol City by 2-0, and you got to say, with their form right now, 5 wins in a row, Huddersfield are now the informed team going into the playoffs. Their momentum has been so good at this final few games of the season that they even took 3rd place away from Nottingham Forest, where it looked destined that Forest were going to be the team that fell short for Bournemouth. But you can arguably say that it was Huddersfield that really fell short, you got to say. To end on 82 points is such an incredible achievement for this Huddersfield team. To have the lowest points, you know, in the championship that they had, you know, from last season, and to almost double that amount of points in this season is incredible. The turnaround, I don't think anyone could have predicted this, that Huddersfield would go up to 3rd place. When I look back at my predictions, which I will be releasing a video on it tomorrow, I'm going to be very nervous to try and explain my reasonings to put Huddersfield in this position, because I think everyone, to be fair, got this wrong. I don't think anyone has expected Huddersfield to do as well as they did, but I think that's the beauty of the championship. We've seen players like Harry Toffolo, which they got from Lincoln in basically nothing, and he scored 5 goals for Huddersfield in their last 7 games. Huddersfield, they got their recruitment right. They stuck by Corberan as well, where there was a couple of times last season especially where they could have moved him on and got for someone more experienced. And definitely, I think Corberan's made a really good name for himself. With Bristol City, I think a bit similar to most clubs that finish down in that lower league part of the table, they're going to want to hit a bit of a reset, and they really wanted to try and establish themselves a little bit. They definitely want to progress up the table. 17th place is seen as not a fantastic season for Bristol City whatsoever. I know they've not really had any danger of going down, but it's just been poor, nothing really special or inspiring. All I will say is that if they can keep their attacking players healthy, they can definitely have a good attacking squad, but they really need to build their foundations at the back. Their defence has just been not good enough. They've conceded the most chances per game, so they really got to try and deal with that game management, get some control in the midfield, and to improve their back line. And then we see Hull, throw a spanner in the works for Nottingham Forest's campaign and deciding who they're going to get in the playoffs, because Forest at one stage looked like that they were going to get Luton Town, because Brennan Johnson did manage to get a penalty in the 92nd minute, scores it, takes off his shirt, gets a yellow card, but then within 2 minutes later, Louis Coyle, from just outside the box, whips a strike. Is there a touch from Keane Lewis-Potter? There's a lot of debate of who's got the goal. A lot of people signing for Louis Coyle, but I do think it does come off Keane Lewis-Potter. I did see a couple of replays, and I think Keane Lewis-Potter, what he does really well, his positioning is spot on. He's not in an offside position. He just guides a tiny bit of the ball a bit further past the reach of Samba. It's a really underrated finish, a real striker's finish, which has put his goals this season to 12, which I think is a fantastic goal scoring season for Keane Lewis-Potter. He's done fantastically well this season for Hull City, and Hull will be doing a good job to keep him, because I think he'll definitely be a player that not only from the Championship but even the Premier League I think could definitely be looking into as well. This game in the first half was really dull, but then obviously things spiced up, as I said, in the right final few minutes, with Forest having a lot of things to play for. Forest now playing against Sheffield United in the playoffs. Now that is going to be a very exciting game. Both games this season between these two clubs ended as a 1-1 draw, and I really can't separate them right now. I think both have almost modelled an exact identical season, both having a really poor start, both at some point being in the bottom 3 in around September time, but their new manager comes in and then bang, they get a positive momentum And just like that, they secure playoffs, and they only separate each other by one position in the table, which, you know, is quite amazing that they've had a pretty similar season, both of them there. So I think that will be a really entertaining game, and I really am excited to predict this one as a whole. I think with what's happened, I'm really intrigued to see what they're going to do. They wanted to survive this season. They've done that. New manager, new owners. It could potentially be a really, really exciting time to be a Hull City fan. They've just got to make sure they strategize their approach very carefully. And then we see Luton confirm their top 6 place with a narrow 1-0 win over Reading. Now, this game was definitely not the best game to watch. What I will say right at the start, because I did a watch long on it in the final day, Luton started so well. They definitely could have been 2 up in the opening 10 minutes of that game. But ultimately, the only goal in the game came in by an absolute gift by Nyland. I mean, what's he doing there? Just the lack of awareness, not even checking even one of his shoulders to see if Cornick's behind him. Any goalkeeper should know to do that. I know to do that when playing 6-a-side. You've got to check for any players trying to hide behind you. Cornick does well. He manages to get the ball past him. Empty net, 1-0 Luton. Absolute gift of a goal. Cheeky. And in the second half, it did feel Reading gained a bit more control. Ajaria and Mayte started causing problems. But it was just about enough, and it wouldn't have mattered anyway, following the fact that Millwall and Middlesbrough didn't manage to win their games either. So regardless of what happened, Luton would have got top 6. And I've got to say, what an achievement that is for Luton Town as well, to get into the top 6 within 3 seasons in Championship football. It's just a team that have been progressing every single year. They just about survive in their first season in the Championship. They get a good mid-table position last year, and then top 6 this year. I think that it's a club in the right direction. And to play against Huddersfield, I know they've not had a good record against Huddersfield at the John Smith Stadium, but I don't think it's going to be a game that Luton could definitely, you know, feel as complete underdogs, especially if they can get some of their players back from injury. I think that'll be a really, really good game. As with Reading, obviously, if you take away the points deductions away from Derby and even Reading, you know, Reading actually still would have got down. They would have been relegated because they would have joined on points with Birmingham, and they've got a worse goal difference than Birmingham. Reading have actually conceded the 2nd most goals in the league. So that is definitely been their big problem. It's been their defence. And I've got to say, even with Panovic and Ince, I see Ince slightly improving Reading, but really not by much, considering how poor Reading did look under Panovic at times. And it'll be interesting to see what approach Reading go for to try and fix things. They definitely need a good summer of recruitment. If they can have a bit of a clear out and definitely get a good checklist of players that they want to get, hopefully for them, they can start really improving and try and progress up the table again, because what a fall from grace that is, to finish 7th last year and 21st this year. Definitely have been one of the biggest falls from grace this season is Reading. And what a result this is for Peterborough. A 5-0 victory in the final day of the season. I've got to say, I know Grant McCann has improved them, but gosh, if only Grant McCann was in sooner, he may have really got Peterborough having a fighting chance of getting out of a relegation. So if it ultimately end in 22nd place, 4 points behind Reading, who do survive in this season. And I've got to say, I think Blackpool, in the past couple of weeks, they have been on the beach. I think that was definitely evident when they did lose 2-0 to Derby the way they did. And especially in this game, they were absolutely woeful at times. Shoutouts go to House and Burrows, Kwame Poku, the wing-backs doing fantastically well. And I'm really impressed with Smodits getting the brace. I'm loving that Poku and Smodits are combining fantastically well. 2 Colchester players, of course. We've got Joseph Clark-Harris also on the score sheet. You know, I think, all things considered, I think he would have definitely wanted a better season in the Championship, but he hasn't done too badly in the Championship, I don't think. But the best goal has got to be Jack Taylor in the 89th minute, just outside the box. What a brilliant strike that was to really put it right in the top left corner. It was a brilliant strike, definitely the best goal scored. And I've got to say, I mean, maybe Peterborough will be the most prepared going back down. I definitely think the squad they've got is the best squad going down from the Championship to League One compared to the 3 other relegated teams. It's really just a matter of who they keep. And Grant McCann obviously has got teams out of League One before. He got Doncaster into the playoffs, and of course very recently got Hull promoted as champions, where in the previous season they were rock bottom in the championship. So definitely could be signs of a turnaround for Peterborough if they can keep all those squad players in League One. It's just really a matter of consistency, isn't it? As with Blackpool, great season on their half, definitely defied expectations, managed to survive in the championship pretty comfortably in the end with 60 points. But definitely next season they'll be wanting to make sure they can cut out these embarrassing defeats, because this was another really, really bad defeat for them. And then we see Preston ruin Middlesbrough's chances of getting into the top 6, ending 4-1 to the home team. I tell you what, Preston didn't play like a team that had nothing to play for. They played like the team who wanted to get into the top 6, and Middlesbrough vice versa, not having much to play for. But hypothetically, what the table suggests is that Middlesbrough should have really gone to this game, really fighting for something. Obviously, they were playing hoping that things were going to go their way. And I got to say, a lot of the time, before Cornick actually scored for Luton, even if Middlesbrough just took the lead and momentarily overtook Luton, I think it would have really, really made things tricky for Luton against Reading especially, but it definitely would have given them a lot more confidence there. But I've got to say, it was a fantastic performance by North End. It really, really was. Alan Brown with a fantastic goal, a chest and a volley there. Emil Reece-Jacobson scored 2 goals. He was very unlucky not to get 1 goal because the build-up to the second goal was fantastic, but it came as a Del Fryan goal. The third one, I think, was the best one. The link-up play between Archer and Jacobson was so fluid. Very, very cool, calm finish, and he dinks it over Luke Daniels as well to make it 3-1 it was. Middlesbrough obviously started the second half quite well when Marcus Tavernier scored within 3 minutes in, and we thought, okay, maybe Middlesbrough are now starting to get this comeback, but disappointingly, only 5 minutes later, it then restores, having to try and score 2 more goals for Middlesbrough. So their game management wasn't great at all, and of course Reece Jacobson had the penalty to make it 4-1. Paddy McNair got sent off with a handball, which led to that penalty. It's been really disappointing for Middlesbrough, it has, and definitely with what's been speculating in terms of their spend, Middlesbrough, they definitely could go next season, definitely under a little bit of scrutiny from the EFL, especially if they do breach profit and sustainability rules. They could definitely be fined, or even worse for them, points deductions for them. But with that squad, with Wilder at the helm, you would expect this team to be up in top 6 again. But the fact of the matter is, they've only been in the top 6 once since being relegated from the Premier League in 2017, and that is not good enough for Middlesbrough standards for me. With Preston, they've ended 13th place, actually a little bit below from when they typically would finish in a championship season. It's been a season where it's so difficult to sum up, to be honest, because they've been a little bit below average when McAvoy was in charge. Ryan Lowe definitely puts him an upwards trajectory, but it still falls a little bit short for what he could have done as well. So definitely, I think the fundamentals are there for Preston to have a really good season next year, but definitely if they can't get their 3 loan deals back in Seth Vandenberg, Daniel Livingston, Cameron Archer, it could be very, very difficult. But if they do lose them, they're going to have to try and go back to the loan market again, and they're going to have to try and find some talented players like those 3 players again, because they definitely were a big part of the good parts of Preston's season. We then saw Sheffield United completely destroyed the champions Fulham by 4-0. Now, I did predict Sheffield United to win with the extra impetus that they had to try and secure top 6, but little did I think that Fulham would make up to 7 changes and they would completely be on the beach for this game, because they were. I saw Mitrovic in the squad thinking, okay, maybe they may have a chance. I know they made many changes, and it really didn't help at all. And I think when Morgan Gibbs-White scored the goal in the 10th minute, it really settled some nerves for Sheffield United and their fans as well, and it made things very, very pressurising, especially for Middlesbrough, and I think that's when they really buckled. I think the fact that Sheffield United really were in the front foot, from minute 1, it really set the tone for the final day of the season as well. Gibbs-White, undoubtedly the best player in their team. He really does make things tick very, very well in terms of an attacking sense. He got a goal. He assisted the second goal for Ilman Ndiaye. Ndiaye actually assists for Sander Berger for the 3rd goal, and then Sander Berger manages to assist for the 4th one for Ender Stevens. The third 3 goal scorers actually have 2 goal contributions each, so all 3 of them actually contributed very, very well in this game. Fulham, of course, this is not really a fair reflection on what has been a really good season for Fulham. I definitely think in the Premier League there's still a couple of vulnerabilities in terms of their defensive line. But if they can address and get some good players in, and Marco Silva can tactically change his approach sometimes to go defensive from attacking, I think that Fulham can have a really good chance. And I got to say, with Sheffield United, with a 4-0 win, their momentum to the playoffs is fantastically favourable right now, considering Forest have not been able to win their final 2 games, and they have won their last 2 games. Maybe with Sheffield United having a little bit more form into that playoffs, they could even try and push themselves as favourites. But I think that game between Forest and Sheffield United is going to be very 50-50, and I'm really going to enjoy seeing who goes out on top. Stoke and Coventry ended their season in a 1-1 draw. I definitely think Coventry will look at the season as being a much more successful season compared to what Stoke had done. Gyökeres managed to score the first goal, making it 1-0. And for what I saw in the first half, before Stoke actually got their equaliser, Coventry missed 2 really big chances, and it's just been the story of their season. If they were able to take their chances, Coventry can be a real monster. I think back to when they beat Fulham 7-2 on aggregate, and this was one of their games, or both of those games, where they were actually deadly clinical. It really goes to show how dangerous Coventry can be if their attacking players are, you know, doing the right things going forward with their decision making. But unfortunately, when they do not make those right decisions, they do get severely punished for it. Sam Klukas equalises for Stoke on the counter-attack. Really nice build up to that goal for that part. But you've got to say, another 14th place finish for Stoke. Another season where they finished below the top half of the table. Based on the expectation, the wages, the manager, the players they've got in that squad, you've got to say that's a really disappointing season again for Stoke. I know injuries have not helped it, but there's got to be a second plan if they do have some of their quality players injured. They can't keep relying on the likes of Rancic or Nick Powell to supply the goals. And even at the end of the season, those 2 players weren't severely used in terms of Stoke's last few positive results. They really got to try and respond next year, I think, Stoke City, because I think their fans are really going to grow really tired, trying to see this team deemed great things, but then just falling below the standards. It's just really disappointing. That's all I can say for Stoke. As for Coventry, the fact that Mark Robbins has signed a contract and he's got Coventry's highest position in the Championship for over 16 years, which is absolutely crazy. Congratulations to Coventry there. They're definitely a team a bit similar like to Luton, who I think are just on the up, and I think they've got a fantastic strategy. And I do think Coventry can be a dangerous team next year if they can get the right amount of transfers, and if they can sometimes keep their good players in as well. I think Callum O'Hare, Hamer, Gyökeres, they're all going to get interest from other teams, maybe even Premier League teams. So Coventry got to hold firm to those players if they definitely want to have a really good season for next year. We then see Swansea lose 1-0 to QPR. Mark Warburton ending his reign as QPR manager with a win on his hands. Andre Gray managing to get the only goal in that team, where he was linking up with Ilias Chair. It was definitely a bit of a dull performance from Swansea. Yes, once again, another example of them having more of the ball, 11 shots to 7. Statistically, you'd say Swansea have been better, but they definitely were off the pace for what I saw in that game there. I think definitely fell a little bit on the beach. I mean, Swansea have not really had much to play for quite some time. They really had their fate sealed quite some time back, actually. So they end 15th, which all things considered, we did feel this season for Swansea was going to be a bit of a car crash a little bit, with a new manager coming in, with new styles coming in. They do have a slightly upwards trajectory near the second half, so maybe Russell Martin will be looking at thinking, okay, he can definitely start getting a tune out of his players. He's now got to really try and freshen things up, get new players in, and see if Swansea can get a little bit more consistency. And they definitely need to try and be a bit better at defending from the break, and they definitely got to try and use that possession more effectively to create chances, rather than just holding the ball and trying to outstretch teams, because that's not always going to work in the Championship. With QPR, they finished in 11th. Their expectations was definitely top 6 this season, based on the form they had at the end of last season, and especially with the players that they brought in. And actually, a stat for you guys: Don Ball, Lee Wallace and Charlie Austin, 3 of the 6 players that are leaving QPR, those 3 players are actually in the top 5 QPR players this season that has managed to pick up the most points per game in their appearances. So definitely 3 influential players leaving Queen's Park Rangers in this window, and including the manager as well. But what I will say, any team in the Championship who are changing their managers, because I think there's a couple, get Mark Warburton in. There's definitely one team I'm thinking in particular who's obviously letting go of their manager very, very recently. I'm just thinking, go get him. Get Warburton. Because I definitely think as a manager, he is a capable Championship manager. Not necessarily think he can get teams promoted out from the Championship, but I definitely think he's definitely a manager that can make teams compete well in the Championship. So definitely, it's going to be interesting to see what happens next with Warburton and what happens next with QPR. Who they're going to bring in. Maybe a new manager will freshen things up, but they definitely need to get this next managerial decision right. And then the final game this season ends West Brom 4, Barnsley 0. It's been a very bad season for both of these teams for, obviously different positions in the table, but very different expectations as well. West Brom finished 10th place. They salvaged a little bit of ending in the top 10, but it's nothing to be proud of. With the squad that they got relegated with and for the quality players that they got in all positions in the team, they should not even be finishing close to 10th place. I'm definitely going to feel really angry covering West Brom with my table predictions because I know I predicted them to have a really good season. With Barnsley, another team that have just really flopped expectations, and I think they've been a victim of their own downfall, or their own success I should say, from last year. With Ishmael, it was definitely felt like a really perfect fit with the squad that they had, the system that they play when they were playing on the break and having real high intensity press. But this season with Shop and then obviously Asbaghi near the second half of the season, it just did not work, and it's ended up with Barnsley being one of the worst Championship teams I've seen. 30 points is not great. It's the lowest points I've seen in all of my years covering Championship football as well, and the fourth worst team in the Championship in its history in terms of picking up points as well. So it's been a really disappointing season for Barnsley, and it wouldn't even surprise me to see them promoted back from League One because they have that yo-yo list about them when it goes from the Championship and League One, of course, a bit similar to Rotherham. But I still think I don't know how I feel about it with him having the youngest squad in the league. I don't really have too much faith in Barnsley. Depending who they get in. If they get a good managerial replacement, then I think they have the chance. With West Brom, they're going to stick with Bruce, which I'm still not too 100% sure about. But they really got to try and just win the fans back for next season, because ultimately I think that it's them who I feel most sorry for, especially with seeing how dire this team has been at times in this season. So guys, that wraps up the end of the 2021-22 season. We're going to look at the Championship table tomorrow when I cover my reaction to my Championship table predictions, which, oh my days, some I've got spot on and some I got absolutely horrendously wrong. So it should be fun to cover all of that. Thank you guys for sticking around with me throughout the whole season. It's been a long, hard slog this season with university and, of course, covering the season and streaming, of course. But we've done it, and I've got to say there'll be a lot more streams coming on this channel. We've got the League One playoff between MK Dons and Wickham happening tonight, and I'll also be covering the Sheffield Wednesday and Sunderland one as well. I will be looking at there'll be other playoff games in the Championship, and I'm planning, I'm not saying it's confirmed, but I am planning to attend Wembley for the Championship playoff final and hopefully doing a vlog. So definitely some content on its way on Lex Alexas before obviously things are going to be changing in around July time. So if you guys want to see all of that, please give the video a like. It really helps the channel, and please subscribe so you don't miss that content. We've done really well. The fact we've hit 1,000 subscribers in this season, thank you so much, guys. I really appreciate that. And please share this channel to as many people as you can. All of that really helps too. That wraps up the 21-22 season. Thank you guys so much for watching. You guys are legendary if you saw the end of this video. And as always, I'll see you guys soon. Take care, everyone.